Well, in the UK, the media is just going pretty crazy for the last weeks now about the person who's going to lead the Labour Party. Could have ramifications for the Isle of Man, of course, if they ever get to power. But really, the point would be, have you got an opinion on who you'd like to see leading the Labour Party in the UK?
Well, we have a long tradition, I think, of working with the leadership of every party, whether it's in government or not. And we have an interesting relationship with the previous Labour government, for example.
Interesting. That's very diplomatic.
So any changes which take place, we obviously are pragmatic. We will accommodate our approach. It looks at the moment as if Mr Corbyn is going to win. All of the various polls seem to point to a fairly overwhelming win.
A radical change, that would be, right?
It will generate a very radical change from where we are. It's not just a change of personality. This is a very radical shift to the left, something the Labour Party's not been comfortable with for over 30 years, not since Michael Foot, in fact, led the Labour Party. So this will take a little time, I think, for us to, assuming this happens, to assess exactly what these the implications might be. Now, the thing about elections everywhere is that it's always best to wait until the election's out of the way before you start analysing the rhetoric around it, because the reality of being in power, even if it is only in opposition, is sometimes somewhat different to the type of rhetoric that's generated in the actual campaign itself. So I think we need to qualify it with that. But one interesting factor with Mr Corbyn, of course, is his chief economic advisor is in fact Richard Murphy, who is... Of course,
you know him well.
We know Mr Murphy very well. He's the head of Tax Justice Network, which has been a fierce critic of the Crown dependencies and offshore business generally. And I think the one thing, if Mr Corbyn does win, in fact he's already raised the issue, we can expect much more high-profile rhetoric around those issues. Not necessarily an attack directly on the Isle of Man, but there will be a wider debate he will want to generate, I think, about the relationship of the Crown dependencies and offshore world generally with the UK. So there will be possibly some change of emphasis on that front.
Because old Labour was what the Isle of Man obviously did better out of, because they were taxing the rich, of course, and making them flee to safer jurisdictions.
Absolutely. There will be lots of ramifications, though, of Mr Corbyn taking over. Already there are strong indications that he will struggle to appoint a front bench, a number of shadow ministers. And it's often the shadow ministers that we deal with rather than the leader of the party. So it remains to be seen who we will be dealing with on a more regular basis, because it wouldn't be Mr Corbyn if he wins. And that in turn may well impact on the various policies that they promote. But there will be quite a radical change, and this may well be a reflection of the sort of anti-establishment movement right across Europe, where we have a lot of left-wing or populist parties which currently have sprung from nowhere virtually to seize power with greater or lesser success. I suspect some of the sentiment behind Mr Corbyn's very rapid rise to prominence is based on a continuation of that sentiment in the UK too.
And whoever wins, do you go knocking the door straight away to make some sort of put some feelers out there, relationship details?
We always, putting it loosely, introduce ourselves at a very early stage. As you know, I spend a lot of time in London lobbying MPs, House of Lords, business people, and Mr Corbyn and his key ministers or shadow ministers will be very much on our agenda once we get clarity as to what that new lineup is likely to be.
And do you still go to the party conferences?
Yes.
So that would be the point there.
That will probably be the first point of contact. I think the Labour conference is towards the end of September. We will be at that. It's in Brighton this year. We always go to Labour. It's a good place to make contacts with ministers, with MPs, and on occasion party leaders. So that probably will be our first chance to speak to the new players in the new lineup.
And of course, another one that's standing knows the Isle of Man pretty well, because he was dealing with the reciprocal health agreement, of course, wasn't he?
Yes, I mean, Andy Burnham knows the Isle of Man well. He was responsible for reinstating the reciprocal health agreement.
At the last second.
When he first took over,
Yeah.
he replaced Dawn Primarola, who caused all this problem in the first place, who bizarrely has just been elevated to the House of Lords. But Andy Burnham knows the island well. I've met him on a number of occasions. He's from Lee, so he's almost a neighbour of ours. He knows where the Isle of Man is. And whilst I wouldn't say he will be a huge friend of the Isle of Man, at least he knows what he's talking about and has had dealings with us.
I should ask you, have you got one you would like, or you're not going to answer that? Have you got one?
No, I don't have a particular favourite. I think the election of Mr Corbyn as leader of the Labour Party at this particular juncture is or would be a very bold, brave decision on the part of the Labour Party, but they have to decide the direction the future party is going to move in. But if it does happen, there will be a very clear delineation between the Tory party and the Labour Party at the next election.
And that's the most fascinating thing, isn't it?
It's
The two of them are so close together, and the potential now to be very much a different choice.
We've heard probably for the last 20 years about the need to engage the centre ground in politics, and all parties have gravitated bit by bit to that centre ground. We've suddenly, since the general election, blown that out of the water altogether. The Tories have moved much further to the right, and if Mr Corbyn wins, the Labour will go much more to the left. That leaves the centre ground then with a question mark over it, who is going to fill that gap.